but for the most part, the only time parents came to the board meeting in large numbers was if we threatened to cut extracurricular activities, or if their child was getting recognized before the board. And then they would come and they would sit for our recognition, and then they would walk out, and the boardroom was filled with nothing but administrators and employees. What you need to do, and I don't blame people with Common Core because they worked very hard to keep this a secret from all of us for a very long time. They got at least a 3-year head start on us, really more than that. But there are so many other things that happen, and what you need to do is go to those school board meetings. I know it's hard, I know we all have busy lives, but this is our children that we're talking about. And when those school board members don't do what you elected them to do, you need to get in their face and either tell them, I'm going to find someone to run against you, or I'm going to do it myself because you represent us.
This is for anyone on the panel. Have any of you had K-12 teaching experience?
I taught 3rd grade many years ago for 2 years, and I taught at the high school level, French and German.
Do any of the speakers understand Arizona's unique challenge teaching at-risk students?
I get pretty wonkish on this particular subject because, this all began, to be honest with you, because I'll kind of put on more of a nonpartisan hat for a moment. This really all started under Bush 43. This idea of no child left behind, the idea that we're going to test every kid every year in the core academic subjects to determine whether or not they're making AYP, annual year of progress. And in schools and school districts where a significant percentage of kids aren't making AYP, then we're going to consider some sort of sanctions against them. In other words, this is all again top-down, federal government imposed on state government determined on district and charter schools. There's nothing wrong, though, with high standards. I want to make that clear, provided that they're designed by Arizonans for Arizona students. But this idea of high-stakes testing, that's a whole other ballgame. I have people come up to me all the time and say, but Frank, how are we going to know how our kids are doing compared to their peers in other states? If you go into the Race to the Top grant application, the baseline measurements are all based on the NAEP. The NAEP test results, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, nicknamed the nation's report card. We've been giving that for years and years and years because you see, if we take, to the question Andy asked, if we take a lot of funding, as we do as a state, for low-income students that come from families or households that qualify for the federal free reduced price lunch program, the trade-off for that is we have to administer the NAEP every 2 years to representative sampling of kids in the 4th and 8th grades in the subjects of reading and math. There's other NAEP tests that can be added, but at a minimum in reading and math. So there's already a national test. But if we're really going to go down this path, we're going to test every kid, and then we're not only going to aggregate the test scores at the school level, the district level, the state level, but we're going to break them out for what they call the disaggregated student populations. These are the more difficult to educate segments of the student population. Then we clearly see the heavy lifting, the hard work we have to do as Arizonans. Because we do have a significant number of students that come from low-income families living at or below the poverty level under that particular program I described, Title I of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. We have lots of kids that have learning disabilities and have an IEP, an individualized education plan. We have, and they're all, by the way, tested on the same test, which makes no sense. Because we're Arizona, we have a significant population of students with limited English proficiency, what we would call English language learners or English second language students. And we also have real challenges with Native American schools and students on our tribal reservations, tribal nations. So if we're really going to get serious and say, okay, look, where is the achievement gap? Well, the achievement gap is with those more difficult to educate segments of the student population. They're the ones that are lagging significantly behind, not behind peer and grade level. And if we want to improve test scores on the part of those students and test scores as a whole, as a state, we really have to focus intensively on those student populations and try to get them the remedial and intensive help that they need to be able to close that achievement gap and bring them up to peer and grade level. It's a huge challenge, and that's really where our resources need to go, and not into Common Core standards and testing.
All right, don't go too far. This is a question for Frank, and it's actually, there's three related expressions of this, and so let me get this. It says, explain exactly how you will rescind Common Core on day one if elected governor, and is that really possible? This one says the memorandum of agreement commits Arizona to a process that will lead to adoption of standards. Adoption of Common Core was done by the State Board of Education per its authority under the state constitution in the ARS 15203. State board's action can only be reversed by the board or by legislative action. Why do you think a new governor can repeal Common Core by tearing up the memorandum? And then the other one is, can the Common Core be stopped by an executive order of the governor? If not, why not?
Thank you, Andy. I actually prefer that the state senate president answer those questions. Just an interesting side note on this. Did you notice that a few weeks ago that the governor, the superintendent of public instruction, who I very much hope is on his way out, and the State Board of Education decided to withdraw Arizona from the park consortium? Did you see that? That's just a fig leaf, right? Because they're going to turn right around. Park got a huge head start by being able to field test our kids for quite some time. So they have the inside track. If we go down this path of getting the primary statewide assessment, but it was done like that. Governor, superintendent, state board. So I just want to be very explicit about this, and I want to be very explicit to Ken, because I know the question, he's got a question on his mind as well. Look, folks, I'm ready to do the job on day one. I'm going to start in that transition period, hopefully working with Diane as the state superintendent of public instruction, but I'm going to make clear that I expect the resignation of the members of the State Board of Education who voted to adopt Common Core, and I'm going to have appointments ready to go on day one, ready to send to Andy as the state senate president for their review and consideration, because they have the confirmation power. We're going to have all our ducks in a row so that we can do this and get it done. Just as the players, governor, superintendent, state board, decided to withdraw us from the park consortium, in order that it looked more objective when Park gets the actual test contract. So, but I want to go on because, and thanks to Anita Christie on this, because this is from another blog by Mercedes Schneider. I don't know if any of our panelists know it. They do, or not? And Diane knows EduBlog. Exiting the Common Core Memorandum of Understanding. Now she calls it the Memorandum of Understanding. The actual document says Memorandum of Agreement. She points out that the document includes no provision for exiting Common Core. It also includes no wording in which states are bound to Common Core if the original signatories no longer hold the positions of governor and state education superintendent. And you know why I think that is? Because as I read a few moments ago to you, the document says that the standards are intended to be voluntary, right? It's right in the document. I'm not making that up. I quoted that exactly. It says, since the Common Core Agreement fails to include language binding states, if such states receive race to the top money, the grant, right, no doubt excluded, so that the U.S. Department of Education might maintain that it is not forcing states to accept Common Core in order to receive race to the top grant money, but in fact that's exactly what's happening. It's a quid pro quo. That she concludes that if Common Core is truly not federally enforced, then it will not. Then the feds will not pursue states choosing to be state-led right out of Common Core and the memorandum of agreement. So I'm pretty confident that, I've got a pretty extensive business background, many years. As I mentioned, I'm a former United States Congressman. I chaired the House of Representatives Education Subcommittee. I'm pretty confident in my ability to interpret documents, and the memorandum of agreement is in fact a contract document. Now the governor, outgoing governor, Governor Brewer, obviously her power ends the day she leaves office, and she has no power to then bind her successor. And I, as the incoming governor, have the power and can use the legitimate executive authority of the office to rescind her signature. And by the governor withdrawing, and again, I hope it's in tandem with Diane as the state superintendent, by us withdrawing, effectively rescinding the signature of our predecessors, the contract, the document is invalidated. But again, I'm not going to wait until, we're going to have all our ducks lined up in a row, and I want to be very emphatic with you, okay? If you want someone in the office that'll just tinker around the edges, make token changes, don't vote for me. Vote for someone else. But if you want a true warrior, someone who will do just as I'm saying today, knowing full well and expecting you to hold me accountable for what I've said here tonight, I would very much appreciate it and be honored by your support and your vote.
Ladies and gentlemen, that has to be the last question due to our time constraints. I want to again thank Jennifer Reynolds and her organization who worked so hard to put this on. Thanks to Frank and Diane for being here. Ken Bennett, Judy Burgess also here. I want to thank our distinguished panel. They've come from a long way. They've been working on this. We appreciate all of you being here tonight. And I thank each of you for being here, taking time out of your schedule to be here tonight, making arrangements to be here. So thank you. Thanks for your thoughtful questions. Have a great night. And thank you so much.